We're too low now.
Okay.
All right, we're back.
This is, yeah.
We had a technology failure.
Okay.
We now are connected again, which is good.
Part 2.
All right, Adam Grant here again.
Yes. And Tim Urban here again, and this is now our current situation is we have the thing hanging from a tree, the phone, and we have Adam down there with his laptop scooped up on his bag.
Charging the phone.
Yeah. So
we were talking about the big 5.
Yes.
As an alternative model to personality. So we talked about extroversion, introversion, talked about being more conscientious versus spontaneous. We were just wrapping up agreeable, disagreeable, and then starting to talk about being emotionally stable versus reactive, right?
Right.
So when bad stuff happens, do you freak out or do you keep your cool? That's basically the spectrum of emotional stability, reactivity.
Someone once said, I remember hearing someone say that you can tell a lot about someone by how they untangle Christmas lights.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, like you can just, it's like it defines a lot about your personality with like some people just quietly and methodically, and other people kind of like, I feel like that's that one.
So I think if you put that together with conscientiousness, you get it, right?
Yeah.
So like highly conscientious, highly emotionally stable. People are like, okay, this sounds like this is a project that I'm going to tackle. I've got a goal and a plan.
Right.
And then
how about people that have a goal and a plan and they're organized, but they have no self-discipline and they can never carry out, not referring to anyone in particular,
I don't know any of those people.
just if someone like that existed. What's the, because you mentioned one that was self-disciplined and organized.
Yeah. So what's weird about these traits, and this is what I think, there are a lot of challenges. So the Myers-Briggs has a much better marketing engine behind it. Right? The big 5 are harder for people to wrap their minds around, in part because these 5 categories are super traits, and they have lots of sub-traits under them that tend to cluster together, but they don't always. So for example, if you are somebody who scores in the middle of conscientiousness, it could be that you're kind of organized and you're kind of disciplined, or it could be that you're one of the more unusual people who's super organized but then has no self-discipline.
Right. You're doing 2 extremes, or you're both moderate.
Yes, and those things they're lumped together under conscientiousness because most people who are organized are also good at follow through and discipline, but not everyone is, and you're obviously in an unusual camp there.
Yeah, maybe. And then the 5th one. What's the
fifth one? Is openness to experience. On the open side, you're always interested in seeing the world through new perspectives. You tend to like exploring different cultures, art, poetry, music, maybe even updating your values over the course of a few months or years. And then on the more traditional side, you tend to be more conservative. You like the familiarity of the tried and true. There is sort of one core set of things that you believe in, and you don't want to change that.
Interesting. And so people take this test the same way? Is it a bunch of multiple choice kind of questions?
They often do, but what it should really be is you take some family members, some friends, some coworkers, they all rate you, and then of course you're going to express different parts of your personality in different roles. But the question is, what's the common denominator that everybody sees?
Right, and you can, and how can you use this? So just say, we all magically had a perfect big 5 rating of ourselves. Then what? What do we do with that information?
I don't know. You think about it.
It's fun.
Cocktail parties.
Does it help you figure out what kind of relationships you should be in, what kind of jobs you should have, what kind of roles you should be doing?
It can. I think it's more useful though for figuring out how to adapt to all the challenges we face in life. Right. So I know I'm a highly agreeable person. I score off the charts, and I for years in the classroom I got this feedback from students who would say not everyone is right when they make comments. And I wanted them to feel encouraged and safe to disagree with each other, but I also was trying to teach a class that's about evidence, and I was kind of nodding and smiling at everything. And so knowing that my tendency is to be super agreeable, I have to act way more disagreeable than I think I do in order to actually challenge them.
Right, you're if if here's the middle, you're over here, so you just have to calibrate everything one way.
Yeah, exactly. And I also then know that I have to separate agreeableness is about really caring about what other people think of you and about the relationship that you're creating. And I happen to be highly agreeable, but also pretty high on openness. And so what I do is I sit down with each of my students one-on-one, and I let them know that, I've been asked to disagree with people more in class. Are they comfortable being challenged? And once I get a yes, it's all about oh, now we're having an intellectual exchange. I don't worry about damaging our connection.
Because they're not taking it personally. It's the idea you're challenging. You're not challenging their intellectual ability.
So I think a lot of this is about self-awareness and other awareness and being able to.
I think knowing yourself. It's just amazing how much of life is trying to just be clear-headed. It's so hard. It's so amazingly, you can just say, oh, I need to work on being a better friend or a better boyfriend or a better employer or whatever, and you know what you need to do. You make the resolution and you write it down. You're in a late night thought and you say, okay, I'm going to try to do this more. And then 2 days later, you're like, oh, I totally went back to my own. And it's just, you slip into the unconscious fog so easily in life. And I think, anything you can do to kind of at least say to myself, I need to have a little alarm that goes off in my head that says, with certain parts of life, that I'm more likely to be kind of, unconsciously going in a certain direction without realizing. I think, if a personality test can help that cause, that's huge.
I agree, and I just think they shouldn't be tests anymore, right? It should be peer feedback. And then you get the feedback, and the question is, how well do these people know you? And or like how much have you been what you think is the real you with them?
I also think even just comparing the self-test to the tests that others with, saying, where am I delusional about? At least, maybe I am like this and they're all wrong. But the fact, whatever, but what I think that people assume this about me, and actually they don't, okay, that's a big disconnect. So what's going on? And just to be aware that I think I'm giving off this trait to the world and no one else is seeing that. Or
why not?
Whatever.
Yeah, and then how do I close the gap?
Right, I think that's really interesting too.
I think that's useful. And then, like when we take this into the workplace, we have about 3 decades of evidence now that there are certain kinds of jobs where, it's easier to succeed if you're highly conscientious. Like, I don't want you running a nuclear power plant or flying an airplane, right? If you're really low in the conscientiousness scale. But like people who are very spontaneous and not conscientious make amazing improvisational jazz musicians.
Right.
And like the conscientious people are always like, wait, what's the script?
Right. They want to be reading the music.
Yeah.
The last thing they want to do
is
be right.
So you can do that. There's a lot of team composition work, suggesting that some combinations are harder than others. And back to the Myers-Briggs, I had this exchange with the people who are very fond of it.
They're mad at you.
Yeah, they're a little upset. And look, I'm open to being proven wrong. And I said, look, I want you to show me some data that, this assessment does a better job than other assessments we have out there.
They don't like when that, they don't want to have.
Well, they said, this is not about that. This is about self-insight. And then I came back and I said, well, but we actually have good evidence that self-awareness helps people be more effective in their job. So if I can connect self-awareness to performance, and you're saying your thing causes self-awareness, then you should be able to show that your assessment leads to better job performance. And no one has taken me up on that challenge.
I feel like they're acting like a politician. Like, you're like, well, how about the data? They're like, it's this. That's not what this is about. The American people want. You're like, what? No, you just like dodge the real. It's like I feel like they do a lot of like, if then why would Johnson & Johnson be using this if this were so, if we needed so much data?
To be fair, they collect their own data, but they don't use updated scientific frameworks. So they cling to the Jungian definition of extroversion, introversion, even though no social scientist takes that seriously.
Right.
And then they go and they don't publish their research in peer-reviewed journals where others can vet it. And so it's just hard to know what they're learning. And so after I broke up with the Myers-Briggs and said, this is over, I then came back and said, all right, look, MBTI, if you want me back, you have to change too. And if you're willing to update, improve your theory in light of the data that have been collected by lots of teams of researchers who have no stake in one set of ideas, which is how science works, then I will come back and consider a relationship in the future. But still waiting for that to happen.
Yeah, you're not going to settle.
What was your experience like, Tim, of when you went through the categories of either the Big Five or the Myers-Briggs? What aha moments did you have? Because I can't have these anymore. I've read too much about all these traits. And I feel like I have a pretty good sense of not only how I view myself, but other people have judged me. You got to look at this stuff fresh.
I don't know. As I said, I just get frustrated because I feel like it's a continuum, and all these questions depend on the day, depend on the thing. But I will say there's something fun and addictive, just like it's not that different than horoscopes, about getting your Myers-Briggs and then getting all your friends Myers-Briggs and being like, oh, of course you're that thing. And even if it's a little bit BS, there's something kind of fun about it, and it's just and it forces you to even think about the personalities of your friends and how you all interact. So I feel like there's some utility in just getting people thinking about this stuff, and it, even if it's not we don't want to use it for a scientifically rigorous situation, it's got to tell you something about yourself, right? The Myers-Briggs has to at least get at some truth, right? Or is there something for all the people? The last thing we can say here is I'd say people watching this, probably 10 times more people watching this have taken a Myers-Briggs and have a 4-letter code in their head than people who have taken the Big Five. So at least for right now, until we all take the Big Five, what can we take from our Myers-Briggs score?
Well, I think the thing most people take from it is just it's this aha of all the reasons I thought other people were aliens, they just have different preferences than I do. And I think that that's a useful realization to have, but I would prefer that when you discover what your preferences are, they happen to map onto like preferences that actually differentiate people.
Right. At least it should be taken with a grain of salt and not be taken that seriously as this is now who I am. I am this 4-letter score, and then the site says that I'm not compatible with this kind of 4-letter score, and this is what my girlfriend is. Oh no, we shouldn't
Don't break up.
Yeah, no, don't break up over the Myers-Briggs.
But I think you hit on something really interesting when you said you had such a hard time judging yourself, because this is one of the reasons that we can't trust self-ratings is you know too much about your own behavior.
Right.
You've seen the full spectrum of yourself and only a sliver of everyone else.
Yeah.
So this is a reason that other people are so good at evaluating you, is they can look at you with roughly the same amount of data, the same kinds of experiences they've had with others, and they kind of know like what's normal Tim or what's like typical Tim that shows up. Whereas you don't know that because you get to interact with all the Tims in your head.
Well, okay, we'll end in a second, but like if I'm saying normal Tim, so the problem is sometimes I would be like, I would be thinking, you know, I really do have an impulse to do something this way. And when I do it that way, I'm happier, but I rarely do, right? Because something else gets in the way, but that's actually more natural place for me. So I know that actually this is more fitting with who I really am. And other people say, oh no, Tim, of course, he always does things that way. That must be what he likes. So in a way, is the self-rating thing, maybe you can get actually at the deeper truths about what you really prefer?
I think that gets at your values, not your personality. So I think of your personality as
how it manifests.
The habitual, the defaults, right? Of like how you're going to think, feel, and act when you're put in a random situation. What comes out like most of the time in most of the situations.
Well, so in that regard, maybe other people's assessment of you is the personality you currently have on. And your assessment might be in your personality, you need to figure out a way to bring out so that other people's opinion of you starts to match what you really think you are, who you really think you are.
I think that's the aha, and it's how you do that depends on where you stand on this 6th trait that I think you could make a case should be in the big 5, which is called self-monitoring. So you and I are both very high self-monitors, which is we have lots of different selves, and we're constantly adapting to fit into social situations. Low self-monitors are much more likely to say, like, I will be the same person in every other interaction, no matter what. And it's much easier for high self-monitors to close the distance. Low self-monitors tend to do less adaptation.
Is it self-awareness? Is it tied to self-awareness?
Often. So there's like an ability and a motivation part. The ability is like how easy do you find it to like slip into different roles and characters, which by the way are like not necessarily inauthentic because they might be your values.
Different sides of you.
Yeah, exactly. You know? But some of that also is like, do you even know that you're getting perceived this way?
Right, exactly. Okay, well, this was great, very interesting. I got to learn from Adam for free here, and
I think the next one I want to learn from you about the future of a really cool technology. Do you have one that
I have some in mind. I have some in mind.
All right, well, we'll try not to have the technology fail for the technology discussion.
And although the Central Park thing I thought was kind of nice, as it turns out, this turned out okay other than our contraption here. So,
thanks for joining us.
Till next time.
Whoever's there.